gays should have equal rights, but I also believe it should be implemented in a way that is best for military morale.
Well, you've all announced your support of gay rights. Do you support same-sex marriage rights? Do you support repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act, which forbids federal benefits for same-sex couples legally married in various states and other countries currently?
The Defense of Marriage Act is probably the least Republican law that I know of. Republicans believe in states' rights. We give a lot of we give a lot of talk to states' rights. For hundreds of years, the issue of marriage was a state issue. The fact that the federal government stepped in and tried to regulate that state issue, I think, is appalling. The fact is, it's unconstitutional. You cannot regulate the reciprocity between states. You just can't do it. This is an issue that should be left to each state to decide. The federal government should have no involvement. It was passed by a Republican Congress, yes, but signed into law by a Democratic president, and I think it's something that we need to repeal short order.
And do you personally support marriage equality?
Personally, I think that, yes, I believe that people, my wife and I, we've been married for a while now. We were high school sweethearts and together for a long time. I can't think that anybody else would be able to fully understand our relationship, and that's okay. But people should be able to respect our right to get married and to live together and to enjoy one another's company, and I think we should have the same respect for other relationships as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bloomberg.
Thank you. On a personal level, I am strongly in support of, as I say, gay rights, and do support gay marriage, but I do think it's a state-by-state issue. And I don't like when you have federal courts trying to step in and circumvent the democratic process. I think what happened in California right now is an undemocratic way of achieving the goal. And if you just look over the past 6-10 years, you've actually seen enormous advances. I think the population is correctly shifting, realizing that rights to marriage, whether it's between a man and a woman, two men and two women, is really a state issue. It's a personal issue, and the government should not be getting involved. And you're really seeing that shift. I think the right way to achieve that is by people being on the streets, by rallying, by supporting it, by putting it up to votes, and having it passed by the state legislators, and then putting it in place. I want to avoid trying to have judges legislate from the bench and mandate to the people what the laws ought to be. Because when that happens, the judges take the voice away from the ordinary Americans and take it themselves and say, we the judges decide what the right laws are. And
so you think the people should be allowed to vote on people's rights?
I think the people should be allowed to vote on areas like gay marriage. But I think it is a question, and like I said, I am in support of it, and would be out there in the streets. I went to the Gay Pride Parade, and I went and I supported gay marriage there.
Thank you, Mr. Blank.
Thank you. Well, I think there have to be two distinctions made. There's religious marriage and then there's civil marriage. Part of finding gay marriage constitutional is not requiring a priest, a minister, or a rabbi to perform marriage. However, I do believe civilly that gay marriage is constitutional. I've read the brief by conservative attorney Ted Olson that was filed in California, and I think the denial of gay civil marriage is unconstitutional. And although I believe that many issues should be left up to the states, if a state passes what is an unconstitutional law, the judges have an obligation to then turn around and overturn it. And I think that under our Constitution, gay marriage, it is a denial of equal rights to deny gay marriage.
Thank you. We're, of course, running short on time, so let me try to ask a few yes or no questions. Do you support, I'll start in the middle now with Mr. Brumberg, do you support offshore oil drilling?
I do. I think it's necessary, and I think if we don't take advantage of all America's natural resources, we increase our dependency on foreign countries who are clearly not our allies. And a lot of the money that flows to organizations that hate the U.S. terrorist organizations comes from those same institutions that we buy the oil from.
Yes or no? Sorry, I'm sorry to cut you off, really. I could use hours to talk to all of you. I apologize for that. Mr. Blank, offshore oil drilling?
Yes, I support it, but I also support it with appropriate and strong environmental protections to make sure it's done safely.
Thank you.
Yes, I support it. I want alternative energies in the future, but right now, oil's the game, and we need to decrease our dependency on foreign oil.
Do any of you support the Tea Party, and would you join the Tea Party supportive caucus in the Congress?
May I answer that?
Sure.
Well, first thing, I think the Tea Party is great for society. It's people getting involved. It's democracy in action. I am not aware that there is a formal Tea Party caucus. I know that's been talked about, but I don't think anything has been yet finalized. But I think it is great that people are getting involved with their government and making an effort to be heard for what concerns them. I think active and vibrant democracy is good for both sides of the aisle.
Thank you.
I agree with a lot of the core principles of the Tea Party. I think what they really stand for is the idea that government in Washington is not smarter than the Americans themselves in New York and throughout the entirety of the country. I think that there's very strong belief in the Tea Party that government is massively overreaching and that Obama and the Democrats' attempts to micromanage every aspect of our life needs to be rolled back. It's not how America was built. We're built on the idea of individual responsibility, fiscal sanity, and the entrepreneurial spirit. And I think this is part of the Tea Party, and beyond that, it's actually a core American principle.
Mr. Lumberghetto.
Yeah, look, I think it's a wonderful thing. It's a grassroots movement, and both parties are afraid of it. And I think that's why we see a lot of criticism, both Republicans and Democrats, because what the Tea Party movement is saying, both parties have abandoned us. We were a country of limited federal government, of enumerated powers, and a country that respected individual rights and individual responsibility. And both parties, both Republicans and Democrats, have moved away from that. And I think it's a fantastic thing to have a force out there, a grassroots movement that'll push both Republicans and Democrats in the right direction.
Okay, it's time for closing statements. You each have 2 minutes, and I'll try to keep track of that. I'm going to ask Mr. Blank to go first.
Thank you. First of all,
try that camera.
Thanks. We need disciplined, serious leadership in Washington. I, as a former prosecutor, I fought crime, I fought corruption, and I offer that disciplined leadership. I will note that you've heard from 3 candidates this evening. 2 of the candidates are long-term Republicans, and right now address this to the Republican primary voters. 2 of the candidates, myself and Dino, are long-term Republicans. We have established credentials in the Republican Party. My fellow candidate, Ryan, he's a lifelong Democrat, and that is a serious concern. He became a Republican on April of this year. Otherwise, he's always been registered, and he's always voted as a Democrat. And I think the primary voters should know that. There's nothing wrong with a Democrat. I'll be, at some point, hopefully seeking their votes in November. But the primary voters should know that who are the Republicans and who is the Democrat in this race.
Thank you. Mr. Birnberg.
Thanks. Well, let me start off by thanking once again the League of Voters and everyone who's watching them tonight, and then say what simply what Roger said is not true. I probably have better Republican credentials than anybody else in this race. Let me look back in 2004, where I was one of the lead members of Peter Hort, Republican in the West Side, when he ran for U.S. Congress. I actually helped get Mayor Bloomberg's endorsement for that campaign and was considered critical in that year. When I went out to Stanford for law school, I was actually an officer in the leading Republican, leading conservative legal organization, the Federalist Society. And now back here in New York this year, my team and myself actually got more signatures for Republicans both at the state level and ourselves than any other candidate running. That includes both of my respectful opponents in this race. I've actually been a registered Republican. I did it for the first time in New York years ago. I don't know exactly why there's been issues, but let me focus on why I'm running and listen to where I stand, which is I am a true fiscal conservative. I'm in this race because our country is genuinely at a crossroads. If you look at the unemployment, you look at the $1 trillion deficits going from here on into the future, you realize that America is very much at risk at losing that unique prosperity which we've had for the past generations and generations. I'm running because I actually am the only person here with a background in economics and a background in business, and I have a plan to get our country back on track. My message, fiscal responsibility, individual responsibility, and restoring the entrepreneurial spirit is more than just a core Republican message. It is a core message of the American people. And my campaign has had amazing success across party lines. We have Republicans, independents, and Democrats all working for us because they realize that our message and the fact that it resounds across party lines is the only way that we can retake this district, go to Washington, and fix the country. So actually I ask everybody out there who's watching to get involved. My campaign, Drummer for Congress, is the only one that has a chance to actually take back this district, go to Washington, and make sure that the America that we see in 10 years is when we want a prosperous country where we all have jobs. I am terribly afraid if we don't, we'll end up looking like the countries in Greece, countries like Portugal, countries like Spain that are on the brink of bankruptcy.
Thank you, Mr. Brumberg. Mr. LaVerghetta.
So, I've been endorsed by the Republican Party, both Manhattan and Queens. I've also been endorsed by the Independence Party and the Libertarian Party. I have broad support and we can win this year. You know, the Independence line gives us an additional 15% of the vote. That puts us within striking distance of victory. I've been a lifelong Republican and I want to fight for those values, and you can trust when I go to Washington, I won't sway with the political winds. I'll remain a Republican and fight for those values. And what Roger said was correct, and it has to be said, and people need to know, is that Ryan was a registered Democrat until April of this year. He actually filed to run for office before he became a Republican. It's public record. I asked the people, the press, if they'd like to look at it.
I do want to say it's actually...
Hey, you've had your time, Mr. Brumberg.
They can go ahead and look at it. But we have enough Democrats in Congress representing us already. We don't need another one. We need to fight and stand up for Republican values, and that's what I'm for. Like I said before, I come from humble beginnings, and I was able to rise up and succeed and do great for my life, and I want to make sure that the same values are available to future generations to come. And that means reducing the size of government, cutting taxes, reducing the deficit, repealing Obamacare, and replacing it with something that gives people a real choice and actually reduce costs, and fighting corruption. And just one last thing, as an attorney at Debevoise and Plimpton, I spent 2 years working on the largest anti-corruption case in history. When I go to Washington, I'm going to bring those same skills and knowledge base to fight corruption in Washington, make sure that our leaders are acting like our servants as they should. And I thank you very much. I hope for your vote. Please visit us at dinoforcongress.com, and please remember to vote on September 14th. I appreciate it.
Well, you've all been so good about sticking to time. We do have a minute left, so I'm going to throw you a couple other things. Who are each of you supporting for governor of New York in this year's race?
I'm going with Rick Lazio.
Mr. Brumberg?
I like Rick Lazio, but I actually think that Carl Palladino has a much better chance of winning the race. He has $10 million compared to the $500,000 that Lazio had the last reporting, and I think that Palladino is actually more of a true fiscal conservative, which to me is incredibly important looking at the state Washington State Albany is in right now.
And Mr. Blank?
Rick Lazio. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having me on tonight.
You're very welcome. I'm told I have 30 seconds, but I think I have a little more than that to 28 past. So yes or no on the Islamic Center a few blocks from Ground Zero?
Maybe legal, but just because something's legal doesn't mean that's the right thing to do. It's insensitive, so I'm opposed to it.
Thank you.
I oppose it. I actually went down there last Sunday when there was a protest saying you have a legal right to do this, but it doesn't make it moral, it doesn't make it right. So I was one of the only people down there, along with some of these Senate candidates for the Republican Party, who actually called on them to move the mosque and to find a different location. Because this imam in particular...
Enough. Mr. Blank.
I'm against it, and I actually was the only candidate who spoke at the community board hearing against the mosque.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I am sorry that we had limited time because clearly there's a lot more we could have talked about, but I want to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this debate. These are the three candidates in the Republican primary for the congressional seat in District 14. Dino LaVerghetta, Ryan Brumberg, Roger Blank. The primary is September 14th. The polls are open from... And I guess...